the military came to Benowitz and essentially said, yeah, you're right, but you can't tell anybody, this is dangerous, we're not completely in control of the situation. And they expanded upon this by saying there was this sort of subterranean installation in Dulce in northern New Mexico under this huge mesa called Archuleta Mesa, and they fed him all these weird and bizarre stories of different levels to the Dulce base where there were nightmarish experiments going on captured humans, and that the U.S. government essentially wasn't allowed in there, to become a no-go area even for the military, that they were, nobody dared go down there for whatever was going on. And essentially this, it sent Benowitz crazy with stress and fear that he tapped into something that the rest of us didn't know. There was this, this sort of malignant alien presence that the government couldn't control. And, as I said, the mesa or the underground installation was out of bounds to us. And he kind of had the weight of the world on his shoulders, and he had more and more material fed to him. He became more and more paranoid, he couldn't sleep, became stressed, and eventually he was hospitalized for like psychological exhaustion, and he never really fully recovered. Now, as Greg's book points out very skillfully, what Benowitz seemed to have been fed was sort of an ingenious combination of some real data and some false data, possibly to confuse the truth behind the UFO phenomenon should other people come looking, but mainly to destabilize him and to push him down avenues which they could then control. When Benowitz was doing his own thing himself, he was in control. They wanted to take the control from him and put it in their hands, and they did that by feeding him information that sort of endorsed what he'd already concluded. So he tended to go over after that material. However, there's no doubt that, for example, in Dulce, that there's been a lot of weird stuff going on. For example, if you go to the FBI's website, The Vault, which is a really good website, it's where the FBI have loaded all their declassified, or most of their declassified files on all sorts of subjects, hundreds and thousands of different topics. One of them is a cattle mutilation file from the 1970s. And these are all sort of investigations looked into and shared with the FBI by the New Mexico State Police. Most of the reports that make up that FBI official file were from the Dulce area in the 70s, and that particular file runs to about 120 pages, and it's filled with reports of the local police investigating black helicopters and animals with their organs removed, and something weird was going on at Dulce. We know that. So that's why the story of Benowitz is still wide open, but to what extent, he was fed the truth, lies, or somewhere in between for obscure reasons, we don't know. But what we do know is that, it had the desired effect. It plunged him into this sort of psychosis almost.
Yeah, so not to plunge us into that psychosis, but in your assessment, what sort of level of government involvement with this phenomenon, whatever it may be, are we talking about, in terms of your understanding?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I actually differ quite significantly to a lot of people in ufology. They'll say, oh, the CIA are the bad guys, or the NSA or Air Force intelligence are the bad guys. I actually don't believe that at all. What I think is that the really sort of deep secrets of the UFO phenomenon aren't sort of held by the people who we think would be holding them, like, senior personnel in the CIA or the DIA or NSA or whoever. What I think is that the reason we haven't sort of cracked the secret is because, we're using the Freedom of Information Act, which will only get us so far, and we're going after the known agencies who I actually think today don't know that much. What I think is that probably a few decades ago, maybe a little bit longer, all of this was taken out of the hands of the acknowledged agencies, the U.S. intelligence community, and sort of handed over in full scale to what we might call like black budget programs, or possibly even a black budget program that was buried very, very deeply, that gets its funding through alternative means, that isn't answerable to Congress, where there's no oversight. And essentially it's like a little government all to itself. And unless you're invited, you don't get to know about it. You know, the kind of situation that could be people listening to this show now in the Pentagon saying, yeah, he's right, we really don't know what happened at Roswell. But somebody does, and I think that somebody operates outside of the confines of regular government, and that's why it's become so hard for us to find them. And that's why disclosure doesn't work. You know, knocking on the door of the Pentagon or the White House and saying, here's 4,000 signatures, tell us the truth of Roswell. Well, if they're not hiding the truth, which I don't think they are, then that's not going to do any good at all. And even if you do go knocking on the right door, well, they're not going to open it just because somebody has got a bunch of signatures. You know, that's just naive. So I think the goal, if you like, is to find who it is that's sitting on the data. Then hopefully we would get the data. But we've got, you know, it's no good just looking for the data. We've got to find who's sitting on it, and I don't think so far we've done that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think it's possible to do, like, using the type of resources that most people have access to. Then again, what do I know? But I just want to be conscious of our time here this evening, so maybe this would be a good point to wrap up this portion of the podcast. We've talked a lot about a sort of a wide range of subjects that you address in your book, but I'm just wondering if you had any final thoughts for the listeners about the subject, your book, Bloodline of the Gods, and this whole idea of humanity being a product of genetic manipulation from, you know, other entities, possibly
sure.
aliens.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, what I would say is probably, you know, maybe people would have the same sort of thoughts and ideas as me, that there's no doubt that it's an interesting phenomenon, and that when we look into it, we find a lot of significant parallels between ufology and the Rh negative issue. And I think what we should do is recognize this, investigate it further, and do so in sort of an open-minded, unbiased fashion, and just see where it all leads. Because to me, at least, it leads somewhere. I don't think it just leads to a dead end or coincidences. And, you know, the challenge, if you like, or the outcome could be something that has significant impact on us as a species, on our history, on who we are, on our early origins, etc., etc. But I think we should go in not sort of charging around like a bull, but we should go in looking at it sort of openly and responsibly, and just saying, hey, this is interesting. There are some anomalies here. There are, you know, patterns developing, and see where it goes. And if wherever it goes is the answer, maybe the answer will be where we think it goes. It may not be that answer, but it may be something even more alternative that we haven't even figured out. But for me, there is a mystery to be resolved.
Oh, indeed. Indeed there is. Thank you so much, Nick Redfern. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And I hope everyone will tune in for the membership section, where we'll be talking about some rather interesting experiences, and I'm really curious to get your take on them. In the Occult of Personality membership section, UFO and alien encounter expert Nick Redfern will give me his opinion of my own UFO encounter in 1991 and its possible meaning. From there, we'll discuss some of the high strangeness and esoteric aspects of ufology and much, much more. Don't miss that captivating conversation. Just go to occultofpersonality.net/membership and join now if you haven't already. It's the best way to support the podcast while receiving access to a tremendous archive of additional exclusive content. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.